Hey, what's going on? And welcome back to another episode of the Saturdays and Stores podcast, which you can find right here on the Court Store Media Network. My name is Kanaye, and on today's episode, we get to talk about UConn finally snapping the streak of 4 straight years losing at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. UConn was able to take home a big win against a ranked and very, very tough Seton Hall team, 69-64 on Wednesday night. Overall, I thought that while it did get ugly, this was something I did definitely expect going into the game. And the fact that UConn was able to get out to an 18-point lead at one point in the game, I think was definitely shocking to me. But I think deep down, I knew that Seton Hall was going to make it interesting at some point in the game. And they ended up doing it. They were able to cut the lead to one. Ultimately, though, UConn was able to come home with the win. Thanks to some clutch free throws from Silas Demery Jr., as well as a very clutch block from Braylon Mullins. But basically, on this episode today, I will be giving you guys my takeaways from what I thought overall was still a good win, despite it getting a little interesting, probably making it a little more uncomfortable for fans watching at home than it probably should have been. But before we get into all of that today, please engage with the content you see on this channel in any way you can, whether it's liking, subscribing, or just telling other people about the Court Storm. Everything goes a really long way with influencing YouTube's algorithm, getting more people to see our videos. Also, be sure to turn on post notifications so you're the first to see our newest videos. So let's get right into it. Of course, UConn won 69-64 at the Rock in Newark, New Jersey. Like I mentioned, leading up to this game, UConn had lost in Newark for the last 4 seasons that they've gone to, that they've made the trip to play Seton Hall. I don't know what it is about the Rock. It just seems to give the Seton Hall players some superpowers whenever they go up against UConn. But thankfully, might want to credit the win to the person, the UConn fan out there who hired a witch on Etsy to place a curse on the Prudential Center and the Seton Hall basketball program. But overall, I think that just goes to show how insane the UConn fan base is. But anyways, let's get into the actual game recap. I think immediately what came off as a really strong performance was the defensive job that UConn did in the first half. They really limited Seton Hall being able to get to where they wanted outside of Bud Clark. Bud Clark early on was able to get into the mid-range and knock down some of those jumpers. But the 3-point defense in this game, I think, was really, really impressive. They held Seton Hall to just one make on 16 attempts from beyond the arc. And that attempt that was a make came within the final 2 minutes of the game, if I'm not mistaken. So the perimeter defense continue to be really outstanding this year. I do think that UConn, when Seton Hall was going on their run to cut the lead to one, I thought they were a little weak in defending the dribble drives. I do notice that they kind of fouled a lot in this game against Seton Hall as well. But outside of that, I mean, the first half, the job they did defensively and being able to push it to double digits going into halftime, I thought was really strong what they did on that end of the floor. Now, I think offensively, the biggest takeaway was by far Terrace Reed. Terrace Reed in this game had 21 points, 9 rebounds, 3 blocks. I think the job he did in this game was probably one of his better games of the season. I think it's his 4th time, if I'm not mistaken, that he's gone over 20 points. And it's definitely good to see Terrace Reed kind of getting back to the Terrace Reed that we know that he's capable of being, just because I think he's kind of been up and down this year. Of course, he's dealt with the hamstring issue, the knee issue, the glue. I forget exactly what it was that he was dealing with earlier in the season. So he's been in the lineup, out of the lineup, hasn't been available for every game. I think he's had to deal with a little bit of rust as well, trying to get caught up to playing college basketball after, of course, dealing with the injuries and being sidelined because of that. But really what he did in this game was pretty outstanding. I think the only knock that you can put on Terrace is just him not being able to make a free throw. He shot 5 for 13 from the charity stripe, and that's definitely something that needs to improve overall. I do think that is something I do kind of forget to mention, that this UConn team does struggle with the foul line quite a bit. They have a lot of guys who just have not shot the ball well at the free throw line at all this year. Malachi Smith is another that's seemed to have struggled at the line this year up to this point. But again, when you had to make free throws, Silas Demery, 6 for 6 in this game from the line, EK 4 for 4. So that was definitely important in being able to secure this win. And then really, there weren't too many bright spots offensively outside of Terrace. That is something that it is starting to slightly concern me. UConn stands right now as the 25th best team in the country in adjusted offensive efficiency per KenPom. And of course, there's the famous stat out there that almost every national champion except for the 2014 Connecticut Huskies were both top 25 in adjusted offensive efficiency and adjusted defensive efficiency. Now, defensively, UConn is there. They're 6th in the country, but the offense is hanging on by a thread. I definitely think I view this in a light similar to what was the 23-24 season, where UConn was a really, really good defensive team with Donovan Clingan on the floor. But you got to remember, he missed nearly a month, if not more than a month, of time after he did get hurt at the Rock. It's kind of coincidence that I mentioned this in a Seton Hall recap video. But after he got hurt at that game in Newark in the 23-24 season, he missed significant time, and UConn's adjusted defensive efficiency numbers definitely took a dip. And it wasn't until a couple weeks of him coming back after he made his return in the Creighton game where he came off the bench that UConn's adjusted defensive efficiency really increased and got into that top 10 level that a lot of people believed it was going to be once Klingon was back and healthy on the floor. Now, I think, of course, again, UConn is hanging on by a thread in that metric, but there's still a lot of time left before the tournament. I do understand it is now mid-January and the offense still isn't looking as crisp as it probably should be, with just considering the personnel and the talent you have on this roster and just what everyone knows they're capable of doing, the potential that all of these players have to be when they're at their peak, when they're playing at their highest level. So I think it's something you still kind of got to give time. Again, similar to 23-24 season, I think the offense will get there, but they definitely do have to turn the corner soon. I think that hopefully by February 1st, the beginning of February, then UConn's offense will be running a lot more smoothly and they'll be converting a lot more of their opportunities. I think a lot of it is attributed to Solo Ball just really not playing well the last couple games. I do think he is probably in his head, like I've mentioned on past episodes. I think he's definitely kind of in the position K was in last year where he's worried about tanking his NBA draft stock. And he's thinking a little bit too much. I think there were opportunities for Solo in this game against Seton Hall where he could have let it fly from three and kind of hesitated and ended up taking a dribble drive. He had 5 turnovers, in this game as well. It just seems like he's thinking too much on the floor right now. And hopefully the coaching staff is doing work to get him back in the right headspace. And, Solo Ball, he's so important for how far this UConn team has the potential to go this year and being able to get back to a Final Four and go get number 7. So I think, you got to believe in Solo. I think he's too good of a shooter for this to last forever. I think he's going to come back to the Solo that we all know, similar to what he did last year. And just, of course, a lot of it is percentages. Percentage-wise, he's not shooting great from 3, very far below where he was shooting at from beyond the arc last year at 41, 42%. I think he's shooting sub 30 currently. So that's definitely not something you want to see, something that hopefully kind of corrects itself as the season goes on. But again, I think that'll help with the offensive efficiency. Solo Ball gets it going from 3. If he's playing with confidence, then you can add several more points onto the game totals that UConn finishes with, and that's definitely going to help. They've not had too many games this year where they've finished over 80 points as a team, and that's definitely something that they need to improve upon. I will say that their defense is good enough to hang with any team in the country, even if their offense isn't running as smoothly as we'd like to see it being ran currently. But I think another concern that I had was just the depth. I mentioned this problem slightly in my Providence recap. The bench was pretty thin against Providence. Eric Ribe did not play all too much. Malachi Smith did not play all too much. Jay Ross dealing with a hamstring, so he only played a minute in the game, and Jay Ross only played 4 minutes in this game against Seton Hall. Jalen Stewart's really the only true bench guy that has been getting minutes over the last 2 games now between the Providence and Seton Hall game. And I think that it is a little worrisome just because this team looked like one of the deepest, if not the deepest teams in the country going into the season, as well as in the early stretches in the non-conference slate. But I do think that while the bench players are sort of struggling a little bit, I think specifically Malachi Smith's case, I think Silas Demery Jr. has just been so good to the point where, Dan Hurley feels like he needs to have Silas on the floor. Silas, I do think that while this wasn't a big scoring night for him, the way I thought maybe going forward, we're going to be seeing more consistent double-digit games in the scoring column from him. I still think that he is turning the corner. I think he played well in being able to make the right reads in this game. He finished with 7 assists. He got on the glass as well. Defended at a high level. Of course, Silas has been the driving factor as to why UConn's defense has improved so much from last year to this year. But I think that Silas is definitely he's played really, really well over the last couple games. And I think that that's the reason why maybe Malachi's been getting the amount of minutes that he was getting earlier on in the season, just because Silas was still kind of in the head state of trying to figure what to do and when, And I think now that he really seems like he's starting to turn the corner and make that leap that T. New made in his freshman year going into the later stretches of Big East play, I think it's made it so that Silas can be on the floor for a lot longer. The last couple games, he hasn't fouled as much as he was earlier in the year and putting himself in foul trouble, making it so that Malachi had to play an extended volume of minutes. So I think that's definitely been good because I think the team is probably best with Silas on the floor. Just having that size in your backcourt, I think, is so important, both offensively and defensively. So a lot of credit goes to Silas there. And of course, knocking down the free throws when he really, really needed them to really secure this win and be able to escape what was a comeback scare in Newark. I think was really great to see out of Silas, and knowing that he can make shots and when you need him to is definitely really great to see. So yeah, I mean the depth and solo ball, those things definitely need to get going. I think the shooting overall, the shooters haven't shot well this year if we're calling it for what it is. Solo, of course, for the reasons I talked about earlier. Braylon Mullins has been a little streaky in his college career to start. Of course, he had the outstanding game against Providence, followed up with another solid outing against DePaul, leading into this game in Newark against Seton Hall. But it was 1 for 4 from beyond the arc in this game. And I think it's tough to score against a defense that is this good. That in reference to Seton Hall is last I checked, the ninth best team in the country in adjusted defensive efficiency on KenPom. So definitely tough being able to score against a top 10 defense in the country. I do think that is part of the reason why this game was so ugly. You have two teams that are better on the defensive end of the ball playing against each other, and it really comes down to who's going to be able to score more at the end of the day, and UConn was able to. Mullins, I'm not too worried about. I think the confidence is there. He had some big shots when Seton Hall was going on the run. There was one point where Braylon Mullins took a nice drive to the basket to increase the lead to 8, I believe, at that point in the game. And then another time around when Seton Hall cut the lead to 4, Braylon Mullins had a nice turnaround jumper to increase the lead to 6. So those were definitely big time shots in those moments of the game. So a lot of credit goes to B-Mole there. Additionally, that block he had late in the game, I mean, those are the types of plays that get you picked in the top 10 of this summer's NBA draft. And I mean, for him it's not common you see freshmen, make those types of winning basketball plays. And for him to do that, and, he's still figuring things out. And I think we haven't seen Braylon Mullins at his best just yet. We've seen glimpses of it, but I think he's still going to come along. Hurley's talked about how he thinks he's on a very similar path line to what Steph Castle's on at this point in their respective seasons. So that tells you really all you need to know about Braylon Mullins, the type of player he is, the type of mindset he has going into every game. And it's very clear. I mean, he's just enjoying himself out there playing basketball. And it's unfortunate because we're not going to have him in STORRS for too long. So you got to enjoy it while he is here and playing as a Husky. So overall, not the best shooting game from beyond the arc from Braylon, but I'm sure we'll see games against teams with not as potent of a defense as Seton Hall has. Against teams like that, Braylon's going to be able to get it going from 3. Outside of that, though, I do want to talk a little bit about something that one of the announcers who was doing the game on True TV, he'd mentioned that he had talked to Dan Hurley and asked, hey, who's the DeAndre Jackson? Who's the Cam Spencer on this team? And Dan Hurley said, we don't really have that type of guy. Now, he did mention AK has been a lot more vocal this year as a leader. And I do think that that's important. That is something that I've noticed. I've seen clips of AK shouting in the huddle and, getting guys motivated, pumping them up, trying to get them to, especially in that game against Providence, he was one of the most vocal people I saw in getting UConn to find the energy to be able to come back and ultimately win that game in OT in Providence, Rhode Island. Now, while I do think that he has been a little bit more vocal, it does worry me a little bit not having that type of an Andre Jackson or a Cam Spencer on this team. I think those types of players are really important, just being able to make it so that you're in a position where you're holding others accountable, you're keeping people, holding your teammates accountable, keeping the energy high, playing like it's the national championship in every single game. I mean, Cam Spencer, UConn had a 20-point lead against DePaul when they were on the road against them in the 23-24 season. Donovan Clingan picked up an early second foul, and Cam got right in his face and told him, we need you to be on the floor if we want to win. And you're up 15, 20 points, and Cam's doing that. And I mean, Andre Jackson, he's a guy that's, one of the ultimate glue guys you'll ever see in college basketball. Just the energy he brought on the defensive end of the basketball. He wasn't afraid to get people to, play at a higher level and play with more energy. And those types of players, I think, to have on your roster are so important. And I really do think that this team needs someone who emerges as more of a vocal leader. Of course, AK has done it to some extent, but someone who has a little bit more fire, I think is definitely something that's going to benefit this team in the long run and make it so that they don't blow an 18-point lead the way they did against Seton Hall. That's something that this team has struggled a lot with, and being able to close games out. I feel it's served points of the year. Yes, the record is great, 17-1, 7-0 to start Big East play, which I believe tied a record with one of the former UConn teams. It might have been the 98-99 season or 95-96. I forget off the top of my head, but nonetheless, it's an impressive start to conference play for the Huskies this year. I do think that even in the non-conference league, you think back to the BYU game, at points in the Illinois game, the Florida game as well, being able to go on runs and not being able to extend those leads from 10 to 20 or 20 to 30 and really shutting the door on any hopes the other team has of coming back. I think that's something this team needs to really develop, and being able to have that killer instinct going forward and being able to finish out and close these games out really strong or on a high note. I think this team needs to develop that, and they don't have it right now. I think it's fair to say that the 23-24 team didn't really have that, and probably until about mid-January, early February of that season. So it's not completely off the table that someone emerges as a dog for this UConn team. I mean, I don't know if that's fair to say. I do think there are dogs on this team, but you need a guy who's a constant motivator, someone who just always has their energy at 110%. And, I think that will definitely help. Again, Seton Hall, one of the toughest playing teams in the country. I knew it was going to be an ugly game, classic Big East matchup. I'm really thankful we got this game because I really wasn't sure if we were going to be seeing any ranked matchups in the Big East this year. But with Villanova playing really well, who knows? This not this Saturday when you guys are seeing this, but the following Saturday at People's Bank Arena in Hartford, that might have the potential to be a ranked matchup if Villanova can win out this week and some other teams lose and the rankings go in their favor. But at this point, I think that pretty much takes care of what I had to say about this game against Seton Hall. Of course, really great breaking the curse at the Rock, just not really being able to win there, finally getting that win. Alex Karaban, who's won at pretty much every level in college basketball, can now say he's won at the Rock. So that's definitely great to see. And of course, it always helps when you get a quad 1A win under your belt in conference play when you weren't sure if you're going to have the opportunity to get any this season. But to get into the Georgetown and Villanova previews, I do want to come out and say that I'm not all too sure if there will be a video that goes up next Saturday. It might be that way for the next couple weeks, just with scheduling wise. I need to see how everything lines up. So I do apologize if any episodes to come in the near future do not come out on Saturdays when they normally should. They might be coming out later in the week, earlier in the week. Well, we'll have to see how that all plays out. But Georgetown is where, UConn's taking the trip to DC on the day you guys are seeing this Saturday, January 17th. Georgetown, obviously, that was one of the big misses that me and Josh had going into the season. We believe that Georgetown was a tournament team, and I really believed in the potential that roster had, and they just have not really looked the part. 10-8, I forget off the top of my head, but that's definitely, they've struggled a lot more than I thought they would. I like the transfers that they brought in, KJ Lewis specifically. I thought he had a really strong start to his season. Malik Mack was a star in the Ivy League, and a little bit of a down year last year in his first year playing for Ed Cooley in the Big East for the Georgetown Hoyas, but I thought he had a really strong start to his season as well. They dropped the game to DePaul where they did not make a single field goal in the second half, shot 1 for 23. And, it's unfortunate because Georgetown is one of the premier programs in the Big East history. And for them to see them struggle the way they have the last couple seasons, it's definitely something that hurts to see as a Big East guy myself. But UConn, as long as they handle things defensively, they should be in a good position to be able to win without it getting too interesting. Of course, knock on wood there. And then you just look for it to hopefully be a get right game for the offense. You like to see guys get back in the rhythm, find their flow. And that, in that scenario, I'm looking at solo ball. I'm looking at Braylon Mullins to get going from beyond the arc again. Terrace Reed to continue the dominance he's had down low. I think this game was a clear reminder that outside the free throw shooting, Terrace Reed is, I think, at his peak, the top 5 center in the country. And I think, he's definitely due to have some more performances like he did against Seton Hall this past Wednesday night. Alex Karaban, of course, he had a really solid game. Nothing that blows you away on the box score on the stat sheet, but just contributing to winning, doing the small little things. I mean, knocking down shots when he has to, being able to get to the rim and get guys behind him with the hostage dribble that he likes to get to. It's all stuff that doesn't go down on the box score, but is definitely important. Jalen Stewart, I think, has really embraced the glue guy role for this team, and that's great to see. It is really interesting because on Bar Torvik, they list the best lineups that teams around the country roll out, and based off their player grades, their player performances, and UConn's best 5 is when they roll out a lineup of Silas Demery Jr., Braylon Mullins, Jalen Stewart, Alex Karaban, and Terrace Reed. I just think that that's probably the reason, because the reason for that is Jalen Stewart, what he provides on the defensive end of the ball. It's just so impactful. He makes all the tough winning plays, dives on the floor, gets rebounds, defends, like I just previously mentioned, at a really high level when he needs to. Just makes a lot of the tough, impactful winning plays that, again, don't end up in the box score. And solo balls obviously struggled to start this year, but, if you get him back on track, then this team definitely has a good chance to go really far in this NCAA tournament and hopefully make it back to the Final Four in Indianapolis this year. But to preview Villanova, just because I don't think there's going to be video that goes up between now and that Nova game, Villanova's looked really good in their first year under Kevin Willard. Kevin Willard, of course, first year with Villanova after his controversial exit from the Maryland program last season following their NCAA tournament run. Of course, that's a conversation for another time, but Villanova has looked really good. They've had a lot of guys really show out. Caden Lewis, the star freshman point guard, he's looked really good as of late after a shaky start, specifically opening night against BYU. He really struggled in that game. Bryce Lindsey has looked really outstanding. Duke Brennan as well. I mean, he's been a double-double threat every time he stepped on the floor for the Villanova Wildcats this season. And let me say that this is one of those games that does worry me slightly. Thankfully, it is being played at home in Hartford. This was a game that I would have wished to see at Gamble Pavilion, but who knew that the bottom of the Big East was actually going to be the top of the Big East this year, and that's probably how scheduling worked out. But nonetheless, I think you got to win this game. This has a chance to be a ranked matchup. I think, like I mentioned earlier, if they're able to win out this week of conference play as well as have other matchups go in their favor, then they could potentially be ranked next week. So that's something that could be really, really fun and interesting to see. I'm really excited to pay. I'm really excited to get to see how UConn defends this Villanova team because Bryce Lindsey. I think he's going to be a tough. I think he's going to. Caden Lewis is also could pose some problems, but it's going to be interesting to see how the freshman handles what I would assume Silas Demery Jr. opening up on him, seeing guy of that size defend freshman guard in the Big East. It's going to be a fun matchup there. And Duke Brennan, the guards, the front court, they got to come out strong and rebound. UConn did get out rebound against Seton Hall. I thought they were weak at the glass. Specifically defensively, they allowed Seton Hall to get a lot of offensive rebounds. I think 13 in that game, which led to a lot of second chance opportunities for the Pirates. So that's something that I look to hopefully get corrected going forward against the games against Georgetown, Villanova, and the games to follow that. But really, I think it's again going to come down to the defense showing up as they have this year, and the offense getting going because this UConn team, they really do need to turn the corner. While I do think it's still too early to be completely worried about the offense and how high of a ceiling that it has for the year overall, I do think we are starting to clock's ticking. We got to get to the point where this offense turns the corner. I think it will. I still believe this UConn offense has a complete opportunity to be a top 10 offense in the country, maybe even top 5, but things got to get moving quickly for that to happen before the NCAA tournament starts. But I think that's pretty much going to take care of everything I had for you guys today on this recap of the big win at Seton Hall. Again, great reversing the curse at the Rock. I really look forward to the next few games to come, especially that Villanova game. Take care of business today on the day you guys are seeing this against Georgetown, hopefully, and go into that Villanova game 8-0 in Big East play. But until the next episode, I'll see you all next time.